Welcome to Reform Review, the show that gets facts wrong about your favourite language reforms. I'm the Casual Conlanger, and in this episode, requested by Calico Nico, we'll be looking at the Apanda reform. Apanda is known for being a tad controversial, so we should expect some pretty crazy changes. He proposed the phonetic spelling reform in his video Fixing the Alphabet, uploaded on the internet video site youtube.com, you might have heard of it, on the 20th of March 2022. It's very recent, so we can hope for some fresh innovations. The Apanda reform saw critical acclaim in the comment section of that video, but doesn't seem to have reached any other demographics. Like last time, let's start with Graphemics. Apanda removed the letters K, Q, and X and replaced all instances of K with C. As a consequence, C no longer represents S or any other sound but K, and Qu and X are written CW and CS respectively. This is problematic because most English speakers are very used to the rule of C pronounced S before E, I, Y like in various Romance languages. Perhaps a more logical substitution would have been the common rule of hard C becomes K, soft C becomes S that appears in many phonetic spelling reforms. Not only that, C in standard English is also pronounced ch in mainly Italian loans such as cello and fettuccine, and sh in words like magician and ocean. So how did Apanda handle those sounds? Well, he chose to represent them with characters from the beautiful Sinhala script used by the 16 million Sri Lankans who speak Sinhala. Descended from ancient Brahmi, the Sinhala script is an abugida, which is a writing system where the base of a character is a consonant generally followed by an inherent vowel, and adding a diacritic to the character changes the vowel quality or completely removes it. Most Sinhala letters are curlicues, that is, fancy curls and twists based on circles, because it used to be written on dried palm leaves. If you want to find out more about the Sinhala script and abugidas in general, links are, as always, down below. Where were we? Right, spelling reforms. For ch, Apanda opts to use this character. Oh, Apanda. Surely sh is better, right? Guess not then. He also handles a bit of English's defective spelling by substituting th in almost all environments with this. Now, if you don't immediately see the problem with these characters, then I envy you. They're clearly too similar to each other, especially from afar and for English speakers who aren't used to them, which is basically everyone over the age of 20. Also, the aesthetic of these singular letters does not fit in with English at all, and looks quite jarring. However, it does give the reform a unique look. Apart from those silly substitutions, the rest of the reform is quite reasonable. Apanda removes all digraphs for sounds which can already be represented with a single grapheme, so PH, GH, WH, etc. are all gone as we get closer to a phonetic spelling reform. He also cuts out the VCE rule, which is where a silent E changes the preceding vowel, like cut versus cute, shin versus shine, and so on, and decides to bring in diacritics. So far on this channel, we haven't looked at any reforms with diacritics, so I haven't had much of a chance to talk about them, but I might make a video where I discuss the topic in the near future. What Apanda did is quite interesting. If a vowel is pronounced as it is in the alphabet, then you put a macron above it, so A, E, I, O, and U, or sometimes U. This is actually not a bad idea, as it gives a purpose to the way vowels are pronounced in the alphabet. I'm not very fond of I macron, only because it can be confused for normal I from afar, but at least the macron is more distinct than an acute or grave accent, so it isn't too much of a problem. As a final change to English spelling, Apanda fixed G to G and J to J, which seems like an obvious one after everything else he's done. Let's take a closer look at the phonology and orthography now. As for the consonants, we can immediately spot a few problems. Th and the can both be written th or the new character, which complicates what's already an issue in English spelling. Now, this is probably a mistake, but since there were only 3 sample sentences of the entire reform, they're canon because I had nothing else to go on. We'll look at them soon and you'll see what I mean. Also, he outright removed Y, so there's no obvious way to write Y except maybe I, and J doesn't have a specific symbol. The vowels overall are worse. Like with Benjamin Franklin's phonetic alphabet, there's a lot of overlap, meaning the vowel graphemes are still complicated and definitely not phonetic. Sure, this table looks pretty tame, quite good in fact, ignoring O for but that's because I left out mistakes and sounds Apanda didn't include in his sample sentences. Yeah, much uglier, and that's after me trying to make it look nice while still conveying mostly correct information. O, and O aren't in any of the examples, but we can reasonably assume they'd be U and O. Schwa has 2 ways of being written, and could probably have more if more examples were provided. I is written I, but also E in the word English, so that's a bit of a quirk, and is written both OR and E macron, like E. That's bound to not confuse anyone. Let's look at the 3 sample sentences I keep rattling on about. I can learn English. Using my phone, I took a picture of a whale. Words are spelled the way they sound. Okay. This I should really be capital I macron, this E probably shouldn't have a macron, this E should be an I, this S should probably be a Z unless there's some weird intervocalic rule going on, but it's unlikely since he didn't want specific rules. This O is just a really bad grapheme for O. These A macron are actually pretty cool. I like that he chose to use the strong form even when pronouncing them weak. This F should be a V, this O should probably be an E, and finally this TH should probably be an Among Us, I mean an Alpaprana Chayana. Now I did like it when Apanda touched briefly on homophones and how a phonetic spelling reform only makes them worse. Since they sound the same, they are therefore spelt the same, making them homonyms, which is a big drawback. However, this salient point does not take away from the fact that the Apanda reform is mostly rubbish. Don't get me wrong, fixing the alphabet is a really entertaining video, but the reform fails to be phonetic, uses characters that don't at all fit with the Latin alphabet, and forgets to define certain sounds altogether. All in all, I like the Apanda reform less than Parallel English, but more than... oh wait. Making it my least favourite reform so far. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, where I'll be reviewing SR1.